Mechem Pty Limited was established as a research and development facility of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, the CSIR, in South Africa, to provide the then South African Defence Force, the SADF, with mechanical and chemical technology solutions for defence-related problems, providing a clear indication of the origins of the name Mechem.
I want to start the history of Mechem with the CSIR in the early 60s, 1960s, when sanctions were brought into onto the country by the international community. The CSIR, Council for Scientific Industrial Research, was the big government research body. It had different commercial wings, but when the sanctions came, working for government, the government required that the CSIR also bring their piece into fighting sanctions. So various parts of the CSIR were commissioned to do different things. The chemistry guys, in which I found myself, were asked to look at explosives, at the design of voids and other weapon systems that we could not purchase at that time. What I always tell people is that created quite a good opportunity for scientific people who wanted to work on stuff, because they filled a room with money and gave us shovels and said, these are the weapons we can't buy anymore, try and make them. At that stage, a little group was formed inside the National Chemical Research Laboratory, in the organic chemistry section, which looked after plastics and explosives. And the first job that was commissioned at that point was to build the plastic landmines for the country. It was assessed at that point in time that the Soviets were equipping the countries around South Africa with tanks, T-38s, T-55s later, and that we would be attacked by tanks. So the very first weapons that were locally designed, as opposed to simply copied from things we already had, were the personnel mines and the tank mines. The idea being that we would need minefields to divert the attacks from outside.
During this period, the ACU was responsible for the design and development of 24 weapon systems that led to full production and use by the SA security forces. These included mines, mortars, rockets, demolition charges, and bomb disposal equipment.
The Applied Chemistry Unit, the ACU, it was responsible for quite a lot of weapon systems. Most importantly, were always somehow linked to mines, armor vehicles attacked by mines, and the design of armor vehicles to withstand mines. Being able to develop the mines taught us a lot about the properties of these things, how you find them, how you lift them, the effects they have on different vehicles and things. And it was then also the ACU at CSIR that developed the first wedge-shaped vehicles, right? This was developed, the first one was called the Hyena. There's some 10 different ones that was developed that resulted in a production of some 10,000. Now let me explain something about production. The CSIR is a research group for the government, 4,000 people there, but they do not do production at all. So what was happening is the CSIR would pioneer a design, like the first air-to-air rockets systems made by NIDR, National Institute of Defence Research, ended up in the formation of Kentron by the arms industry, which then built these rockets. The same with the mines. The mines weren't built by Mechem. They were designed by Mechem and they were built by NASCHEM, which was, again, a company that was bought up by government that used to be commercial. It used to be belonged to African Explosives. It was then called NASCHEM. And they made warheads, mortars, fuses, etc. The optics people ended up as El Optra. The wind tunnel guys, they started up the group called Atlas, which built aircraft, and so on and on. So the CSIR group of scientists in the early 60s developed most of the skills that was then transplanted into South African industry by government to combat sanctions.
ACU became Mechem consultants in Arms Corps, where they were still responsible for the basic R&D of land forces and were the design and test authority for MRV. In 1992, when the RSA government decided to commercialize its defense industry, Mechem was grouped as part of the newly formed Denel Pty Limited.
At that point in time, the products that we were making changed from aggressive weapons, into defensive weapons. We built line charges to cross minefields. It was also clear from government analysis of what our threat was, that the threat was really not from tanks, which was initially driving the weapon development in Mechem, but it was in fact of the landmines themselves. All kinds of mines made in all kinds of countries, some 800 different types, were being used by the insurgents in Angola, Southwest Africa, Mozambique, where South Africa was involved in helping the Portuguese government and the local groupings to defend themselves against insurgents. So we produced mine clearing capability in the form of detector systems based on our wedge vehicles. The most well-known and most effective of all of these are the Caspers, where you see a picture behind me here of one operating in a minefield, and that in fact is a minefield in Mozambique, where we simply use steel wheels around power pylons to tread off the mines. The idea is, of course, that as soon as you've cleared the little minefield that is normally put around a pylon, a power pylon, and to keep insurgents from blowing up the pylon, we then can repair that pylon, because the insurgents, in spite of the minefields, were getting in and they were blowing them up.
During this period, Mechem became the leading mine clearance contractor for the UN, using new technologies to speed up operations and improve safety.
The irony is that Mechem started off as the designers that led to the production of landmines for the South African forces. It led to them becoming the people who lifted the very mines that they had designed. When we went into Angola as a government-owned mine clearing company, funded by the United Nations, we in fact found that the South African mines were really not playing a prominent role at all. Most of the mines were Chinese, Russian, made all over the world in the various Warsaw Pact countries. Some mines were British, some mines were American, left over from World War II. And the insurgents were using any one of these mines simply to get at the armed forces by laying the mines in roads instead of in minefields. And it became a complete new way of warfare, which today is going on in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. Okay. The other area in which Mechem excelled was in bomb disposal, because in the cities of South Africa, the insurgents were placing all kinds of bombs, limpet mines, motorcar bombs, etc. And to combat those, we had to develop systems that would detect explosives quite effectively.
Mechem has more than 30 years of experience in the training and operational deployment of detection dogs. With a combination of experience gained and continuous improvement in scientifically based training methodologies, Mechem has become world-renowned for its success and professional approach in utilizing dogs to detect explosives and drugs.
The most effective detector of explosive is a dog. And we linked up with a dog school of the police. Originally, the first group we worked with was the radio unit in Silverton. And with the help of Dr. Neetling, who headed their forensic science group, we developed a system called, at those days we called it SOS, Springstofopsporingsstelsel in Afrikaans. It became known as MEDS in the end, Mechem Explosive and Drug Detection System. We added the drug detection to the name of the system simply so we could sell it into the Americas and some of the non-aggressive countries, if you like. Okay. The system was simple. What you did is you captured the vapors out of a car, out of the field, out of a room, out of a house, onto a filter. And this filter was then presented to a dog, will walk past some 5-6 filters and would sit down next to the one that has the smell he's been trained to find. And we then look at the filter, where it came from, where it was sampled, and we send a bomb disposal crew in there.
Historically part of the land systems group within Denel, Mechem has emerged as one of the successful core businesses, notably in the mine action environment.
Denel, which owned Mechem, decided to split Mechem into the more commercial part, which is mine clearing, and that part they remained calling it Mechem. So Mechem became a mine clearing entity of Denel, which made quite good money for many years and is still doing so. There are 100 million landmines still buried in minefields all over the world in some 100 countries. And that has to be cleared up, because most of those mines today are not demarked by the Geneva Convention methods, which is to put a wire around it with signs up, etc. Those wires get stolen, get washed away, the minefields are not kept up, and they just simply disappear into nature and are really a bad contamination. So there's a lot of business to be had in clearing minefields. Mechem itself is doing that. Its system that it developed with the dogs is one of the more effective ways of finding mines, in combination with other kinds of detectors, which Mechem also applies.